So welcome those who have joined us. Thank you for joining. We're excited to be here with you today. We figured there might be a little bit of a transition period. So we have a little bit of an opening activity that we all can get started on, actually. And then we'll kind of give folks a minute or two to catch up, and then we'll dive into the presentation itself. So our opening question is one that I think many of us are trying to kind of ask students and check in with students on. So we're going to start with this as a session as well. How is this week going for you? What's going well? What's been hard? That's what we want you to think about. And we're actually going to just ask that you go to this Menti. So go to menti.com. You can either do it on your phone if you have that close by. Sometimes I know with Zoom, it's a little hard to go back and forth, or you can do it on your computer. And just go into that code 8154246 and answer this question. How is this week going for you? What's going well? What's been hard? And we're just going to give everyone a couple minutes to kind of come into this session while we're answering this question. So for those who just joined, we're starting with a quick do now while we wait for folks to transition from one session to another. How is this week going for you? And you can go to that Menti that's at the bottom, go to menti.com, either on your phone or on your computer if you can get to another tab easily. And just type in that code and you should be able to answer the question live right there. And I'm actually going to go to it so that we can see people's responses. And just so you know, the responses will be anonymous, like your name's not going to be associated. So feel free to share however you would like. So for those who are just joining us, we're starting while we're waiting for a little bit of a transition as people come from one session to another. We're starting with a quick do now. This question, how is this week going for you? What's been going well? What's been hard? And you can go to that Menti that's right at the top of my screen right now, menti.com, and just put in that code. You can do it on your phone, or you can do it on your computer. And after you've done yours, you can take a look and see what is coming up for other folks. Love it. And I'm seeing some more folks come in. We're just starting. We're going to get started in just a minute, but we have a quick check-in, a quick do now to start. And the check-in question is, how is this week going for you? Just from an emotional perspective, what's been going well? What's been hard? And you can go to that Menti that's right at the top of my screen, either on your phone or on your computer. And you can glance at the screen to see what's coming up for other folks. Okay. Okay, we'll do just another 30 seconds before we dive in. For anyone who just joined us, we're starting with a quick check-in. You can go to the Menti that's right at the top of my screen, shared, and just type in that code and you can answer this question. How is this week going for you? What has been going well? What's been hard? And then after you've done it, you can scroll through, or you can scan my screen to see the kinds of things that are coming up for other folks on our session. Right. Okay, I think our waiting room has largely cleared. So you're welcome to just take a look at my screen to see what kind of things folks have come with today. And I appreciate everyone sharing. Perfect. Thank you. So we are thrilled to be with you today. We'll start with some quick intros of our learning leaders today. Maybe I'll pass the mic. James, would you like to introduce yourself to start?
Sure. My name is James Bailey. I have been associated with Sown to Grow for 4 or 5 years now. Both used it and consulted with them. I'm a former superintendent, school principal, did some turnaround work here in San Antonio and do my own consulting work now.
Ms. Collins?
Hi, my name's Kim Collins. I'm a 17-year teacher. I've been working with Sown to Grow for 3.5 years now. I'm a math teacher and department chair at Ann Richards School for Young Women Leaders.
Wonderful. My name is Rupa Gupta. Thrilled to be here with you today. I'm a former administrator. I'm based in California, and most recently was in San Jose Unified School District, which is one of the larger districts here in the Bay Area. I had a few different roles, both in the district office as well as at the school site. And my most recent role was actually a school transformation type role, similar to some of the work that James has done, and really focused on practices that we can kind of implement in ways that are accessible for a lot of different students, teachers, schools, and how we can make those easy to implement, but really soundly connected with research. So our goal in our work today is to share some of those learnings on practices that we've seen specifically in the advisory context, and around connecting social emotional learning with academic success and progress, and how all of those connections can be really powerful when there's consistent routines and practices that are a part of it. And then we will be sharing, obviously, I think all of us know that we're in a very unique context right now. We'll also be sharing some of those. And actually, I think I have my next slide, might be a little more on the agenda. Oops. There we go. Let me do this instead. So as I was saying, in terms of the agenda for today, we're going to share some of the research that a lot of our work is founded on. What do we mean by social emotional learning? Obviously, the title of this session is building an SEL kind of enabled advisory space. What do we mean by that? What are the things we're looking for, and how is that connected to longer term learning outcomes for students, academic outcomes, as well as sort of life and belief system outcomes? We will be talking deeply about practice, specific routines, structures, and practices that we found to be successful. And it's been interesting, I will say, in the area of practice, I think a lot of our work started with like a little bit more of a focus on academic outcomes and how the social emotional learning foundation can lead to those academic outcomes and success measures. And I will say in this last bullet around new learnings, particularly in this unprecedented context that we're all in, we've seen how the connections between both emotional kind of check-ins and entry points coupled with academic check-ins and entry points can lead to some of the most sustained impact for our students. So we're going to talk about all of those pieces together today and hopefully plant some seeds and share some learnings that you find useful when thinking about your own structure and context. In terms of norms, at the end of the day, myself, James, Kim, we're learners too. And I think if there's anything that the current context has amplified for us is, sometimes we learn very publicly with our students, like we are all trying to figure out how best to engage with one another, how best to support one another. And I would just encourage you to consider us as thought partners in this, not people who know it all. We do not. We hope to make this experience pretty interactive. So I will say, feel free to turn on your video or whatever you would like, but we will have opportunities to engage in breakouts and talk to one another and process in smaller groups, just because we know obviously with a larger group, it can be hard to get in a word edgewise. And then we'll just say like the chat, please use it. I know many of us are comfortable now in using kind of video conference tools, but please use the chat. We have 3 of us. So if one of us is presenting, the others will be kind of checking out the chat, and we'll try and answer questions and whatnot. And if there are, we will save the chat afterwards and go back. So if there are questions that didn't get answered or where we have a resource that we can direct you to or whatever, we'll try and follow up. We really want to be providing interactively, but also like knowing that we can't answer everything in this 1 hour, we'll try our best to follow up and make sure we're sharing our information as well. Anything that we have that'll be useful. Okay. So with that, let's do another quick just to get an understanding of who is all with us in the room. It would be useful just for us to know kind of what types of folks, what types of roles, etc. So I'm going to ask folks to go to another mentee, and I apologize, it's actually a different number this time than it was the last time for those who did the first one. Just go to mentee.com and use this code 633065 633065. And there's gonna be 2 quick questions. So answer the first and then just hold there for a second. This one you can just do on your phone. It's just like these multiple choice questions if it's easy. The first is, what is your role? Are you a teacher, school admin, district admin, counselor, et cetera, et cetera? I'm gonna give folks just a minute to help us get a sense for who all is here. And you'll see on my screen after you put it up, just so you can get a sense for who all is with us as well. If you didn't catch that code, it should be at the top of my screen here too, mentee.com with the code 633065. And you should see a question. What is your role? I think we have a good number of people, so hopefully we'll give everyone just a minute to find that. Okay, it looks like we have a bunch of others, which I'm curious about. Maybe we'll have an opportunity later to share what kind of organizations and roles that you work on. Some teachers, some school admin. Another 15 seconds. And I actually see people still joining from the waiting room. If you're just joining us in the waiting room, we're just doing a quick understanding of who all is with us. Okay, it doesn't look like that's moving much more. So I'm gonna go to the next question. My next question, obviously the title of this session is around advisory and how we might be able to incorporate social emotional learning practices into advisory. So the next question is, if you are at a school, if you're not, then you don't have to answer this, but if you are at a school, do you currently have an advisory or homeroom period? And what is it most used for? I know oftentimes advisories can be used for a lot of different spaces, but if you asked your students, what is this time used for? How would they respond would be my question. How would they respond? How would they kind of react to that? Okay, so I see some social emotional learning and relationship building is a good space for that. Also some flex time study hall type of space, which I think is pretty common. We'll give folks another 30 seconds to answer this question. And if you just jumped in, we're doing just a quick understanding of how, if for folks who do have an advisory at their school, how is that time currently used? What is it most used for? And if you don't have an advisory, you can mark that as well. Okay. Okay, this is helpful just to understand. It seems like there's at least a good number of folks who are on with us that have an advisory, and it's split largely with as social emotional learning and relationship building, which is wonderful to hear, but also kind of a decent number of folks where there's flexible time or a study hall. Wonderful. All right. Thank you for participating and just giving us a sense for who all's in the room. And let's move towards our work for today. James, I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Great, thank you. Welcome to everybody. I'll be talking today about the research around Sown to Grow. This is a framework called Building Blocks for Learning, which comes from a group called Turnaround for Children. And we know that right now, last time I counted, I think there's 21 or 22 major frameworks out there that help define social emotional learning. And the reason that we like this one is that it really shows the developmental progression for young children all the way up to, again, being self-directed. So again, you can see on the left side the kind of categories from healthy development, school readiness, all the way up to the idea of being sustained and independent. These skills, again, are shown as developmental, and that's how Turnaround talks about this. But we also know that anytime a student hits a new sort of developmental plateau or area in which they need to get better at, we sort of fall back to the bottom. There's lots of discussion and research now around, for instance, self-regulation, executive functioning for adolescent students. Any of those of you who teach high school students or late adolescents know that sometimes their executive functions are not where we want them to be, because there's a lot of brain growth going on at that particular point. But this again is the framework that we use as we think about Sown to Grow. Next slide, please. So basically what we've designed through Sown to Grow is a simple weekly practice that moves from students setting their goal, where again they can set those again, as Rupa said, from a social emotional to an academic type goal. Over time then, through the week, they can actually track that or longer period. And eventually they learn to reflect upon those and set new strategies or choose new strategies. So in this practice, students really know and develop again how to set goals for themselves. They track their own practice instead of relying on the teacher to tell them where they're at. They reflect upon their progress, how they're feeling, and why. And not only do they reflect upon what they're learning, but how they're learning it. They get to think about the learning strategies that are working for them. And if they're not working, what are the things that they can actually do to change strategies so that things are working? Connecting back to the building blocks, what you can see then, again, that this is, again, sort of a developmental progression that helps kids practice a lot of those skills, so that when students become aware and reflect on the actions they're taking to learn best, they're really focusing on the ideas of self-awareness and working on those executive functions. They begin to see that learning is a process that they can get better at. So they start to develop a growth mindset, the self-efficacy associated with that. If they're struggling, they can be prompted to try a new approach, which really is about the idea of productive perseverance. Instead of doing the same thing over and over again and then making that determination if I'm smart or not at something, they can actually switch strategies to see which ones work best for them. And most importantly, the consistent routine, the scaffolds that are built in for them, the feedbacks on the strategies, build the habit for students to actually manage their own feelings, their thoughts, their behaviors, which again really is the idea of self-regulation. So this really again empowers learners to drive their own growth, which again makes them self-directed, which again moves them toward that independence, which again helps in all levels of learning, especially as they transition from level to level. Next, there we go. So we're going to do a quick breakout here. So again, the question we'll ask you is, in your experience, how might goal setting, emotional check-ins, and self-reflection enhance student learning?
And I am supposed to do the breakout, but I'm realizing that since I'm not the official host, I might not be able to, Autumn. So why don't we maybe just do it in the chat, and then I'll message Autumn to make sure we can do it ourselves later. So maybe folks can just think about this question for a few seconds, and in the chat, just what's coming up for you. How does goal setting, emotional check-ins, kind of those emojis that James was referencing, and self-reflection enhance student learning? What's coming up for folks on that question?
Yes, I love that, Andrea. It's taking ownership of their learning. That's awesome. Providing agency for students. Awesome, Maureen.
And Rupa, we have breakout rooms available right now if people would like to join, or they can continue to participate in the chat. It should pop up at the bottom. Just a note that Zoom did update, so some people might not have the ability to join, or it might not pop up as an option, especially if you're on a mobile version as well.
Okay. Well, let's stick with the chat for now, and then let's see, we have another moment later in the presentation where we're going to do breakouts, and hopefully we'll get it to work there. And I'm just going to private chat you a question because it's looking a little bit weird on my side, but I'll private chat you.
Barbara, I love that. That's such a powerful word, empower. You're empowering your students. I love that.
I like what Adrian listed there, the idea that this allows students to get to the meta level of learning. It's not some gigantic secret anymore, but it's the idea that if I try something that doesn't work, I can always try something else and then see the impact of that.
Danielle, I so agree with you. You need to take care of the person before you can take care of their mind. You know, so many times we focus so much on academics, we forget the other side of that, which is their social emotional growth and how much that can affect their approach to academics. I agree with that.
This is great. And if I know we're kind of citing some good examples, but you can also scroll through the chat to see some of the other ideas that were coming up for folks. Maybe just a few more seconds for any new ideas to come up, and then we can keep moving forward.
Lisa, I like the idea of reflection. To me, you know, as teachers, we spend so much time reflecting on our practice to improve our practice. And I think it's amazing what we can get our kids to do, having them reflect on their experiences and how to use those reflections to gear them towards the next level. And so I like that idea. Reflection is key for growth, not just for adults, but for our students.
Should we move forward, James?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for sharing.
Yeah, those are very insightful. So beyond basing Sown to Grow on the research base itself, we've also done some empirical research to make sure that it's actually working. And I think a lot of the things that we'll show you can point to that. So we did a study, I think probably 4 years or so now ago with a researcher at UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles. And what she did was to look at an implementation at a middle school. And again, what we had a control group and a group of students who actually learned to use Sown to Grow in very much the ways that we talked about. And as you can see on the screen, as we look at academic GPA as the common measure, that the students who actually use Sown to Grow had a significantly different GPA compared to the control group. They increased substantially in their feelings around growth mindset, as you see on the right, and how empowered they felt once they kind of learned the secret to the way that their minds worked and the way the process worked. We also showed that over time is that the students who were below state standards on their test, again, in the control group and Sown to Grow users, again, had a substantially significant difference between their GPAs at the end of that. So what we show again is that students basically who are behind on standards and learning in the academic realm showed a greater improvement over time. So empirically, we know that teaching students how to think about this, to be more metacognitive about their processes, has been proven out in this middle school in the San Jose area. Next slide, please. The other important learning from this research is that, again, the idea of reflection skills, as Kim pointed to, actually get much better. Just like anything else, a skill can be built over time with the right amount of time, effort, and feedback from teachers. When students first engage in the goal setting reflection process, it's pretty normal to see fairly weak goals and reflections, which is what you see on the left side of this. So again, the example that we see there is what kids typically wrote in the study is that, my goal is to get my grades up. So again, they're very generalized. You kind of hear the parents speak in it. They hear what parents and teachers are telling them. But over time, with again the right reflection, with the right amount of teaching and emphasis and feedback, they get much richer reflections. So again, what you see on the right side are the significant changes. So again, we go from about 50% of kids in the red level or low to a lot lower, where we get probably about over 50%, probably about 60, that students are writing much richer reflections. So again, what you see in this student is again a much more in tuned, much more sort of adult-like reflection, where they can actually look at what they need to do, how they're going to do it, and why it's necessary. So again, what this really shows us is that we can, again, this process really is the foundation for building social emotional skills that eventually we know will generate and move towards self-directed learning.
So I'm actually using Sown to Grow within my advisory in my classrooms. And just a little bit about it, I'm in Austin ISD. I work for Ann Richards School for Young Women Leaders. We're a 6th through 12th grade campus. We are 75% Hispanic and Black, and we're 60% low income. We are a school of choice, and our girls come into us from 6th grade from 84 different elementary schools, from varied backgrounds and abilities. And so we have an advisory structure set up where typically our advisory is every day. It's midday. Usually our classes are between 15 and 18 students, and we operate within our advisory, we operate in constellations, which means students are in groups of 3. And this is done for academic and SEL support structure, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. Weekly, we took about 10 minutes of each advisory period and gave them time to reflect. And as an 8th grade team, we sat down and we thought about what questions we wanted to answer, and we rotated those questions on a weekly basis. And so we wanted students to be able to think about what they were learning, how they were feeling about it, as well as we didn't want them to be answering the same questions over and over again. We wanted questions that were specific to our campus and specific to what was going on at the time. And so students would have the ability to track their current real-time grades, enter their reflections, and then our advisory team, we would be able to adjust the reflection questions and be able to talk to each student, whether responding through the Sown to Grow app or face-to-face. And that's what I kind of liked, is being able to have that flexibility to be able to talk to my students. And so this is when we first started out. This is our first week of starting this. And you can sort, this is kind of my view as I'm looking at it. You can sort by low grades, you can sort by alphabetical, by names, you can sort by feelings. And so you can kind of sort this how you want. And so you can kind of see the students, the reflection quality is not great. Even though you may see a student writing a lot, sometimes the meat of what they're writing is not really, it's not really that deep. It's just putting words on a page. You probably know students like that. They're really good at writing a lot, but really with no substance to that writing. And so one of the things we wanted to do was be able to give students feedback, and you can go in, but also you have the ability, there's different links you can click for providing that feedback. And so the great thing about this is the students don't see their score, only the teachers see their score. And so what we looked at is not actionable. What the students were giving us was not going to be actionable, all the way to strategic, the why. And so most of my students were starting out at the beginning of the year with 1 and 2. And so I was being very thoughtful about how can I get them to improve that reflective process. And so we designed lessons to help them think more critically about the reflections they were providing, and did those reflections provide them with an actionable path toward improvement. And that's kind of where we were focusing throughout the first semester. And so you can see this is the end of the first semester, and the quality of this was amazing. So one of the things, here's the questions. It's what classes were you struggling with in the past week? Why or why not were you struggling? What steps will you take to improve your grades for the upcoming week? And we told them be specific. And and some have got cut off, but what tutorials are you attending this week and next? What will you be working on in those tutorials? And so this student came in, you can see she's kind of feeling stressed out here. And I'm struggling in all my core classes but science. I can get my grade up by doing my work and doing retakes. In ELAR, I'm going to talk to her about makeup work and extra credit. In algebra, I'm going to tutorials and I'm going to talk to you about makeup. I'm her algebra teacher. I'll talk to you about makeup work and extra credit. In those tutorials, I'm going to be doing midterm studying, and I'm going to be coming in to Saturday school between 10:30 and 12:30. So one of the reasons I didn't give feedback is I actually had the opportunity to bring the student up because I was concerned about how she was feeling about this. And so I wanted to talk to her about how could we be more proactive where we didn't have ourselves in this situation where we were having to get caught up with work and having to worry about extra credit. And so it was a really powerful conversation I was able to have with her about how to structure her time a little bit better and be able to talk about how she could use her agenda to be able to set up timelines for due dates and be able to think about ahead of what's coming up the following week instead of looking retroactively at what she didn't get done. And so that was a really powerful conversation I was able to have this student. Go ahead.
Oh, Kim, sorry. It looks like there's another example, or should I?
Oh, thank you. I just saw it. Okay, yeah. So this was another student, and she's pretty happy. She's in a good spot. She's loving the way everything's going right now. She admitted that she was struggling in algebra and ELA last week because she wasn't prepared for the Harkness in ELA and didn't have a very good grade on her exam in algebra. She's going to look at her ELA curriculum map every night so that she knows what is due, and she's going to study for algebra between 20 and 30 minutes every night to get ready for her midterm. And then she's going to be attending tutorials on Saturday to help me study for the midterm. And so she had a clear, defined plan. She didn't like what happened, but she knew what she needed to do to fix it. And so that's what made her, even though she wasn't happy about the previous week, she was happy about her game plan coming up on how to fix what she needed to do and help change the direction that she was going. So this was one of my favorite screens, and I love this because I could see from the beginning of the year to midway, I could see how much improvement in their reflection quality there was. We went from an average of a 2 to a reflection quality of 3.3, which to me was a significant gain. And I was seeing that across the board, not just in advisory, but all of the teachers were talking about how the students were using the language of reflection in their classes. And it was really providing that powerful impetus we needed to help drive that academic bus, so to speak, and to help the students really think about what they needed to do to be successful. But we were also honoring their feelings about it and how they were approaching it. If a student had a bad day, knowing that could help us pinpoint little dips in activities being turned in or grades, and to help show them that connection. And so this was such a powerful tool for us to see that this was working. Now, this was great for me to be able to pull up with individual students. When I would conference one-on-one with students, I would be able to pull up, for Thea, I was able to pull up her grades. We could pick whichever classes. We could click all the classes or just 2 of the classes and focus on growth over the span of the year. And then it would also have her reflections. And so being able to see the growth and reflections and have her be able to see that growth, it was powerful for the students to be able to go, oh, wow, look at this. You know, when we look at some of the dips, we could actually go and look at her reflections for that week and be able to pinpoint it to a specific event that was going on in her life and what was creating that emotional turmoil that translated into her academic response. And so her being able to create a whole idea of how all of this was connected, it was just so powerful for her. And it really geared her going into her freshman year of being able to create a game plan to help her be successful that year by looking back at her 8th grade year and all of the different connections that were made between SEL and academics. So some of the things that is going to make this successful. We had to make this a routine. You know, that's the whole key behind it, is making reflection a routine in the classroom. You know, after doing this in my advisory, I actually took it the next step and I was doing this in my classroom as well. And I could see such a huge difference in how the students approached the reflection process. They reflect daily in my classroom. And so that's kind of, you know, the thing is it just takes a few minutes, and it's amazing what those few minutes can do to provide that powerful lever you need to support the SEL that we so desperately need in our virtual classrooms right now. Remember to start simple. I always tell everybody this, you got to start small. You know, baby steps, because if you try to pile too much on, you all already know what this feels like when you get too much piled onto you. You're overwhelmed, you feel like you're drowning. We don't want to do that to our students, especially in a time like this. But what we want to do is we want to provide an outlet for them to be able to express themselves. And this is a simple start to that. Customize the reflection prompts to match what you need. We did this as an 8th grade team, and so we did this specifically to our students. We would be able to get together every Friday. We would have a 15-minute convo. Usually we sat together at lunch and we would discuss what questions we wanted to put for the following week. And we would tailor these every week to a need that we might see with our students or with our classes. And then you got to be consistent. You know, one of the great things I liked about this tool is I could either choose to give face-to-face feedback to my students, or I could choose to give feedback to my students within the Sown to Grow program itself. And you know, there's two positives to both of those. Giving the feedback to them within the Sown to Grow, that feedback that is there for all times. The students have access to that, and they can refer back to the feedback that you give them. For face-to-face, and one of the things that I've learned over the 3 years, I now do both. I have the kids come up, and as I'm talking to them and giving them, you know, our face-to-face conversations, I'm actually typing what I'm talking to them about in the reflection module back to them. And so they can have a permanent record of what we discussed and be able to refer back to that.
All right, I think I'm up next. Thank you. And thanks for that example, Kim. I love that, because actually oftentimes I've also heard from teachers, and I remember also from my school, like I wouldn't remember necessarily what I told in every student, you know, like, and then you're trying to remember, the kids trying to remember. It's like yeah. So I love that example for just documenting feedback and having a space to refer. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and actually focus a little bit more on some of the learnings we've seen bubbled up in this current context, where I think, at least for many of us, if you're not fully virtual right now, you might be hybrid, there's always like a risk of going virtual. It's kind of like the space where isolation and just like a total, you know, all of our school norms have like changed up on us in the last several months, and are very uncertain, frankly. And we all feel that uncertainty, and our students, of course, do as well. And one of the things, while, you know, we talked about how like the advisory space and kind of the relationship building that can happen when you create space for some of this reflection, but a lot of it was a little more academic oriented. One of the things we've seen really bubble up is just even purely like not even thinking about academics, just a pure, simple emotional check-in that happens as a routine can be incredibly powerful. And it's one of the kind of the spaces that seems in some places like is a little bit of a missing piece right now. So the quick check-in that many of you did right when we started. How are you doing? How's this week going for you? How are you feeling? Creating that space for as a regular habit is what we've seen really bubble up as a powerful way to be connecting with students and uncovering what's going on with them. Again, in this advisory space. And one of the things that's been interesting about I know there are a lot of different ways to do those check-ins. And I think, there's a lot, like Kim said, there's lots of pros and cons. But one of the things that when we've been working closely with schools this year is actually that journey, the same kind of academic journey that Kim profiled, the emotional journey has been something that both students and teachers have shared a lot of ahas with. So one thing that I wanted to highlight is in some ways it actually just normalizes that there's ups and downs. It's totally normal and absolutely okay for students to have days where they're not feeling so great, and by seeing that journey be like a shared experience, we've gotten feedback that, oh yeah, kids see like, oh yeah, that was a down day, that wasn't a big deal, or it's not that it wasn't a big deal, I figured out how to come out of that, and now I've got some more tools in my tool belt. So it's really about kind of making the habit and those like regular check-ins that can paint this picture of a student's emotional journey that can be really, really powerful over time. Again, side by side with their own reflections and feedback from teachers or other adults that are supporting. One thing that's been interesting, and I will say, especially for our for students who are obviously digital natives in a lot of cases, we found that like this like online space where there's emojis and a little bit of space to put in where you're at, it's created for whatever reason an incredibly safe space. We've heard from many teachers and just adults on school sites that the same child would never say that to me. They know I'm reading it. When they're putting it into the system in terms of tapping an emoji and typing in a reflection, they know I'm reading it. So it's not like a violation of trust in that sense, but they like saying that out loud or saying that to me in like a meeting or scheduling a meeting with me to tell me that it hasn't happened before. And I'm learning things about my students that I've never learned before. These are just some examples of the kinds of things that we've seen students write when they have the regular space to share. I feel alone. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'll just let folks just scan through those for a second. I just want someone to reach out and show that they genuinely care. Nothing I do seems to be fun anymore, etc. These are just some examples of things that students share when given the opportunity in kind of a consistent way. When it's not I have to reach out because I need help. It's more of a, hey, I'm in the habit of reflecting and I'm going to share where I'm at right now. And I'm going to share it honestly and transparently. Yeah. So I just wanted to flag that for folks. One of the other things that, again, as a learning that we've and been frankly designing in partnership with schools on, and this is bubbled up as a really powerful indicator, particularly for school administrators or counselors, folks who are kind of looking at trying to figure out where their school's at or where their community's at overall. One of the other kind of nice things about having some of the data available at your fingertips is we can roll it up in different ways. So this is an example of like an admin or counselor view where you can see at any given moment, how are my students feeling right now? What is that trended over time, like week over week? So if the trend's going in the wrong direction, I can kind of be more proactive about it. And then also actually see just a list of in the last 7 days, kind of which students are bubbling up to the top as sort of expressing a need, saying that they're feeling down, and what they wrote. So there's ways to provide more proactive support when students have that habit and routine, kind of going back to Kim's best practice of the consistent habit. When kids have that routine as part of their advisory space, we can be much more proactive in providing support for them. And that's one of the learnings that's really shown up this year. I think more so because obviously in the remote context for many of us, you can't get like a pulse of the yard the way that we could when we could walk the building, kind of see, or if you saw a child, upset in the hallway or whatever it might be. Like we're in a space particularly amplified now where having this information at our fingertips can be really powerful. One thing that Kim referenced was some of the technology, how like the technology tools can help us figure out where there's opportunities for growth or improvement. We were funded by the National Science Foundation as well to help build an early warning system. So what that basically means is if a student shares something that triggers our system, that you get a notification either as a teacher or as an administrator. So you can make sure that you read it and respond as is appropriate or you see fit. I am looking at time, so I'm just gonna keep moving so that we can hopefully have some time for questions as well. One thing that I will say, especially for like the advisory space and kind of the SEL connections that we've been talking about, and going back to that building blocks framework that James shared, where kind of the bottom foundations was really like the emotional, kind of real deep emotional attachment, stress management, self-regulation, and then moving up to kind of some of the more academic indicators, self-efficacy, belief systems, and then ultimately self-directed learning. We've seen now, particularly, that there's multiple entry points in how you can engage in this work. Right now, the most common entry point of schools kind of across the country has been that emotional check-in that I just shared. Checking in with students and creating a space for kids just to share how they're feeling and what's been hard this week, what's been gone well this week. Very like much more around kind of like emotional well-being. And then from there, from that starting point, moving into either more academic sort of goal setting and reflective work, or deepening in the emotional practice on maybe like focusing on specific social emotional learning skills, et cetera. So that's like an interesting difference. Whereas I think in the past, we've started more on the academic side and like kind of explored or, deepened in emotional. This year, particularly starting with that emotional check-in has been one of the very common practices that we've seen, in schools in all sorts of different contexts. At the end of the day, I will say, going back to that building blocks framework, an integrated routine that brings together emotional well-being as well as sort of academic belief systems is what kind of the research suggests is really like unlocks the full potential of student kind of engagement and life skills, So how you get there, I think there's like a few different ways, but a few different entry points, but just knowing that bringing those two things together is is something that I would definitely kind of advise to be seeking. And thinking about what the best entry point for you is going to be important in that. So our hope was to do a few minutes of a breakout to talk about some of these questions. What are you excited about? What question, based on what you learned today, what questions do you have? And how might you try some of these practices in your own advisory, or what entry point like that I was just talking about, more of the emotional entry point or more of the academic entry point seems to make sense for you? I think we probably have, I don't know, I know we're kind of just going back and forth or seeing some chat questions pop up. I think we probably have a few minutes. Why don't we do a 5 to 6 minute breakout? Kim, James, are you guys good with that? I think we can do it. Yeah, I think it'll be easier. So Autumn, I'm going to look to you to just do kind of like a random breakout, and you'll get partnered up with a couple of other people and that you probably don't know. And I'll put these questions in the chat as well. Based on what you learned today in terms of practices, what are you excited about? What questions do you have? And what ideas are coming up for you in terms of using these types of practices in your own advisory space?
And Rupa, we all have opportunities to join breakout room.
Yeah.
I'll join breakout room 1. So if there's any teachers that would like to join and talk a little bit more deeply about how to implement the practice or what questions you might have, I'll be in breakout room 1.
Perfect. And then we'll come back in like 6 minutes or so, and we'll just do some quick wrap up. Okay, and I do see a question coming up. Were you able to get your breakout? Is that a raised hand?
Hi, I just don't know how to get to my breakout room.
So one thing that Autumn on the chat just shared with me is if you don't, that's actually part of the reason I'm staying in the main room. If you haven't updated your Zoom recently, I guess they have some new breakout features that only work in updated Zoom. So if you haven't updated your Zoom, you might not see it, is what she said.
Well,
so
I'm
she
happy
suggested that a couple of us stay in the main room to.
I'm happy to talk to you. This is my mask is on because I'm hosting kids.
Oh, no problem at all.
My classroom in Hawaii.
Ah, perfect. Oh, are you Maureen?
Yeah, I'm Maureen.
Oh, good. We were chatting back and forth.
I walked across campus with my computer. Good morning. I walked across campus with my computer open because it was such an interesting session. I didn't want to leave.
Oh, yeah, I would love to hear what's coming up for you on some of these questions. So, nice to see you. Perfect. And I know there's some other folks who are in the main room, possibly. If you are, you can just unmute yourself and join us. We'll do just a couple of minutes of conversation and discussion before inviting everyone else back.
Yeah, I don't want to dominate, but because
Oh, no,
I'm a chatty
no problem
Kathy.
at all. I know that, yeah. And I see one other person. Hi there. Well, why don't you start, Maureen? What's coming up for you? And what questions, what ideas are coming up for you?
Well, I think the interesting thing, because I'm an independent school and, or I'm not, I work at an independent school. And I think one of the challenges we've had, I'm also a silver linings person. And so we had been in about year 2.5 of an advisory redesign when COVID hit. And so I think in one way we've catalyzed our transformation from advisory being announcements to advisory being relationship building in a safe space. On the other hand, most of the faculty who serve as advisory teachers are terrified. They're really comfortable in their, physics zone or even their English zone. I'm surprised at it. Like as I identify as an English teacher, and I always felt like that was kind of our province, but turning out that most advisory teachers are really scared of looking at some of the data that you just showed. Like if a student identified as very sad, I've had a teacher actually say to me, Maureen, I don't want to know those things about that child because I would feel sorry for him and then I would ask less of him, which of course makes me want to cry.
Yeah. And I understand, because I can understand that perspective. If a teacher doesn't feel well versed, or if they don't know what to do, in some ways it's like I'd rather not know. But then the flip side of that, of course, is like as schooling systems, we have to know, because there's just So one of the things, can you remind me of your role, or what is your role in?
So I'm department chair for support and wellness, and so advisory falls under my department. We also have counselors and academic coaches.
Got it. So one of the things that can be really powerful in supporting teachers in this journey when they aren't often trained in kind of some of these spaces is being able to offer proactive support. So it's like, hey, let's create the space for the child. And if you're ever stuck or don't know, I'm here, or other resources in your building. And frankly, that admin view that I was showing quickly, that's actually a great, that we've heard from teachers, thank goodness someone else is also going to be helping look at this, because if it's all on my shoulders, if a child shares something and I just happen to not get to it for a day or two, I can't, it just, then it feels really scary. So it's really nice to be able to have kind of a lot of different hands on deck,
Does
that resonate for you or make sense for you?
Totally. In fact, I just had put that question in chat, was I'm nervous about kids responding and us. And so that data is out there, like this child said this. And then if someone doesn't see it for a week, then, God forbid something happens.
that having the notification system is a powerful support in that. And then of course, just having the availability, like as an administrator or as kind of someone who's overseeing the program, if you were able to put it in place, you can basically just log on every day and see real-time information, which is nice. It ends up being like I know it's a part of the routine, or if you have other staff like counselors or other staff on site who they're looking for kind of the students that are sharing or expressing a need for help. It's like another space where they can look.
Well, and the nice thing about that is we've tried to introduce referrals, because right now the kids are basically on lockdown when they're on campus, or a good portion are still learning from home. So how do we even know these children are struggling?
Yeah.
So having that daily routine where you can notice patterns and you can notice bumps, then that's cool. Sorry, I'll be quiet now. Thanks very much. This is a great session.
No worries. And I feel like on these sessions, I know sometimes folks step out and stuff, or they get pulled into anything. I was looking to see, I think there were a couple of other folks that had turned off their video to engage, but I think they went into other breakout rooms. So.
Yes, well, I'm known to take an entire session if I need to.
No worries. Well, one thing I obviously have your email just because I know before you realized you're going to be able to stay, and thank you for staying with us. But I'll follow up with you and send you some additional resources. And I'm happy to connect to share, and if it makes if there's ways we can collaborate, we're all about.
That'd be super fun. Yeah, we're very much a research-oriented school. Like we have data nerds everywhere, which is, and I mean that with affection and love.
I am totally with you, and I am one of those data nerds.
Yeah. Actually, we change school presidents about every century or every quarter century or so. So our last school president retired in a year ago. So our poor new guy is just at the beginning of his second year, but he was a provost at Grinnell College before he came back to Hawaii, and he's just lives for data analytics. He's a history professor, and just data is his jam. So all of us who do research are really just loving it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that is awesome. Cool. I think we're supposed to get pulled back, so let me just
be quiet. Thanks again for giving me a private lesson.
No worries. We're pulling everyone back in. Okay, and I see everyone coming back in. Wonderful. So let's take a minute, and I do want to just put this up. I'm just going to actually put this in the chat just in case, because I know we're getting to the end of time. So I'm just going to put this in the chat for everybody. But before we dive into this, I'll just do this once we get. I would love to hear what came up for folks in the breakouts. But I just wanted to share, I put a link in the chat if you just want to click on it so it's open as a tab on your computer or whatever. We will share some resources afterwards, after the session today, because of the way they're doing the virtual thing. Normally there's like an online Dropbox kind of thing where we could like put resources from our session, but none of that came together in the same way this year. So they basically just asked us if there was follow-ups. You can just fill out that form and put your email address in essentially, and we'll share with you the presentation as well as some other resources that might be useful for you as you're thinking through these practices. So quick plug for that, just so folks don't fall out. Okay, perfect. So I would love to hear what came out for folks. Any insights or thoughts from breakouts, and feel free to jump in. Or Kim, I know you were in a breakout with some folks, you can share as well, but.
I mean, one of the things to remember, and this was a great question asked, I started this myself. So I did it by myself at my campus for my first year. And I was able to produce such powerful data, and I was able to present that to my administration team that they were like, ooh, boom, we're starting with 8th grade next year. And then it's just rotating up from there. And so that's one of the things I want you to think about, is that start small. Build a powerful base. When you try to implement this school-wide, look at it through a grade level perspective. Get your teachers involved in creating the questions that are going to be impactful for the students of that grade level. And that's where you're going to see the results. You're going to see the results if you're creating questions that are specific to your students, your grade level, and what's happening. And that's really where you're going to see the results. Whether you're looking at SEL or academics, to me, they're both the same. You can't have one without the other. And so building small, starting small, get that powerful base, and it's amazing what sights you can set once your students are on board, your teachers are on board.
Thank you. Words of wisdom from a 17-year plus veteran. I love it. And I know we're bumping up on time right now, so if folks have to drop, no problem. But any other quick share outs or ideas that came up based on either your conversation or for your own school or work?
I appreciate all. I have to run, Rupa. I have class.
Thanks. Yes.
But thank you all for coming today. I appreciate you all and everything that you're doing with your students in your campus. Stay strong. We will get through this together, y'all.
And I will share, by the way, contact information for myself, Kim, and James as well. If you can just click on that little link I put in the email, in the form, and I'll just put it again just so you have it. I saw a raised hand who, for some reason, the name's not showing up on my.
It was Shantae.
Oh, thank
Duran.
you. There you are. Perfect.
You're welcome. Yes, my name is Shantae Duran, and I am a current principal in DeSoto ISD in DeSoto, Texas. And I just want to say that by me, I'm a principal at the elementary level, but I chose to join this today because something that sparks my interest and or concern is that we begin things early and we don't carry them through. And I believe I believe it was Miss Kimberly, was it Miss Kimberly Collins? Yes, Miss Collins mentioned from Austin ISD the fact that, you know, we begin things so big until we really lose the essence of the work. So I do know that SEL works. We're actually in year 4, and we began with the model of with the Momentous Institute and then on to Castle. And so I'm just super excited to see where there's going to be some vertical alignment with feelings, especially considering the particular pandemic that we're in now as a nation and as a world. And so this just excited me, and it does work. You know, we saw discipline referrals on my campus drop by nearly 40% in 1 year because students were working it out together. Students were learning that they did have emotions and that it was okay to have emotions, but how we responded or shared those emotions was what made the most difference. And finally, Kimberly mentioned getting to the root cause. You know, everything that we do, be it positive or negative, it has an effect on you and or others around you. But the key is if it's something that you don't want to repeat you need to get to the cause of what started it all. So thank you so much, Ms. Gupta, for your work. And we will be continuing this at the elementary school. And you gave me a little idea during this session of where I'm gathering my troops to get more involved with our students who receive special program services. So thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing those great examples. And if you put your email on the form, we'll follow up with some additional resources that'll hopefully be helpful in your continued journey. It sounds like you're feeling the fruits of your labor, and I'm just so inspired by that. Thank you.
I think I was going to add it was actually in the breakout room when Kim said start small, and as she shared, I was the one who first worked with her and just kicking it off. I think one thing we've learned in the last year is that you can actually do school-wide without a problem if it's only once a week or twice a week with the emotional academic and an advisory. As Kim said, to do what she's done and deepening in the content, that's not easy to do school-wide to start. However, I'm Colin, and I work with Sun Grown. I've been supporting schools all over the country get this going this semester particularly. But we've actually seen that the weekly emotional check-in actually can go school-wide. And I know there was someone on this call who's doing it with 55 teachers across their whole high school right now and has seen a lot of success with it. So I think I like the idea of what she said, changing the reflection questions, but she's gone into a deeper implementation, which definitely takes time to get to. What we've seen is the importance of that quick check-in is possible, you know, with a whole school.
Thank you, Colin, for sharing. Any other questions or thoughts? Please feel free to jump in on the chat, or I'll follow up with an email with our contact information as well. We've gone over, so I definitely want to respect everyone's time and appreciate the thoughtful engagement and kind of shared learning alongside all of you. Thank you so much, and we shall be in touch with all of the kind of continued space of sharing and learning together in this work. Thanks, everyone. Oh, Maureen, you might, if you're talking, you might be on mute, just so you know. I think I just saw you.
My kids were making fun of me because I was waving goodbye to the camera. Okay, so you guys all wave goodbye to the conference now that you did that. Okay, everybody wave. These are freshmen in Geom honors. Aren't they cute?
All right. Hey, guys.
Yeah. So we're in orange tier right now. And so they have really restricted access. So there's like blue tape on the floor and we all have to wear masks. And
yeah.
Anyway, so they saw me waving goodbye. So they all started waving.
It's cool to see that there's we're in the Bay Area and my son is upstairs doing school from home right now. You know, we're 100% remote still. So thank you for being at the forefront of learning, because I know we're in California are going to be trying to learn from other, other schools and states.
Well, if you go to our school website, we've got an entire back to school plan for athletics. We did so much research. I think we spent like $3 million on resources for the school.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. So if you're looking for sort of tools and ideas, we did a ton of research. The cute thing that sort of sad to see these kids, because we have a really organic, chill campus. But the kindergartners are and every division of the school, we're K-12. Yeah. Every division of the school is doing it slightly differently, but the kindergartners have reading boats. So they have these big storage tubs, and then the kindergartners go into the storage tub, not with the lid on, but so it looks like a reading boat. And then their little books are in there. So then the kids don't touch each other.
Yeah.
And the books don't have to be clean. What a creative idea.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, oh my God.
So
I'm definitely going to pass that. My son is in elementary school, so I'm going to pass that on to the
looking forward to connecting with you. I've got tons of friends at the junior school, so we can also help there. So take care.
Sounds great. Perfect.
I'm going to sign off. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.